That if you come to me and you're like, hey, like I'm thinking about, maybe leaving my marriage, I shouldn't say, oh, that's wrong, Mark. You shouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
That would be me placing my values on you. So as a good therapist, I should be like, okay, well, it's your decision, and, tell me why you want to do that and why that's important to you. I am definitely not value neutral. I think about my brother who went through the same experiences that I did, same family, and to say he struggles is kind of like an understatement,
Mm.
you know? And it's like, well, why did I do that? Why did I go down that path? Why did I have this experience and my brother has this experience?
Welcome to the Recovery Roundtable podcast, where the journey to sobriety opens up through powerful discussions and shared experiences. Join your host, Mark, who will bring you stories of triumph and resilience from the heart of Pacific Shores recovery. Every episode offers insights and support, guiding you through the challenges of addiction recovery. Thank you for joining our community. If you're ready to start or continue your recovery journey, we're here to inspire and support you. Let's explore recovery together.
I am so stoked to have you in the studio. If you don't mind kind of sharing who you are and what you do, and then we'll just untangle wherever this beautiful mess goes.
It's such an interesting question for me to answer that nowadays, because like I don't really know how to answer what I do really well, and I should have a much better elevator pitch. I get that, but I don't even know what I do anymore. It's like I used to just tell people I was a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and then I was like, well, I don't really like most therapists. I don't want to say that anymore. And then I was like, I'm a coach. And I was like, well, most coaches are really, like, I don't really want to say that anymore. So what I just tell people now, I just say, if somebody asks me like, hey, what do you do? I say, hey, have you ever met a really ambitious, like business owner, high performing kind of guy who was really crushing it at work, but his personal life was falling apart? And they're like, yeah, I think I know like a couple of those guys. I'm like, I help that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So then people are like, oh, well, so are you a therapist? I'm like, you could say that. Are you kind of like a life coach? Yeah, you could say that. Are you like an executive coach? You could probably say that too. So I'm this kind of like mashup where I mostly work like today. And today I mostly work with like business owners and entrepreneurs who, um, have gotten some things right, but there's other parts of their life that are not dialed in. So I just coach those guys.
Yeah. First of all, I love how humble you are. I have bumped into a few people that you've worked with, totally restored their marriages, helped them show up as dads. Like that to me is the purpose of being on earth, is to help people that are hurt, show them how to heal, and then in turn help. And that's kind of the little cycle. And I feel like a lot of people are hurt, they skip the heal and they go right to the help.
Right.
And so being able to do that heal part. So it's been just awesome to see. So, oh gosh, there's a question that popped up when you're sharing that I want to go deeper into. Oh, that's what it was. So you see these men that are so task list oriented, able to overcome any problem solution at work. And yet that part of the brain seems to stay at work, as opposed to, what if I was mission driven with my marriage, with my religion, my relationship with my higher power, with my family?
Yeah.
Where do you think the divide comes from?
Well, most guys, and I mostly work with guys. I have some women that I work with, but mostly I work with guys. So I can speak to it from like a male psychology kind of aspect better. Most guys find their intrinsic worth and value from what they can either do or what they can accomplish. Okay. And so it's kind of like that performance-based self-esteem. It's most guys are, because of a lack of healing, they're really attached to kind of like their ego. And being a great dad and being a great husband gives no ego rewards. It doesn't offer any performance-based value. There's no scorecard. Your wife's not going to be like, oh my gosh, like, how can I go out and tell the world how great you are? And so because guys are so driven to measure their success by these performance related or achievement based things, they take their eye off the prize when it comes to like a spiritual life or a great family life, because it just doesn't offer the ego rewards. And, and so, unfortunately, a lot of guys need to experience a crisis of one of those domains of their life to understand how important it is, because without the crisis, they probably won't really connect that dot.
Mm. Yeah, for some reason, it takes excruciating amount of pain to expose an area that we haven't been growing in.
And I trust me, I have tried to lead the horse to water and sell the ice to the Eskimo to get this in front of guys before the crisis, but I'm wise enough to know now that it doesn't work. So I just wait for the crisis at this point.
Yeah. So how'd you make the transition from working in mental health and behavioral health field and helping those with addictions to, well, I was going to say it to everybody, to now just higher level addictions, I guess you could say, but made that transition?
Ooh, okay. This is a doozy. Okay. So, I don't, even though I am technically a licensed therapist, I do not practice therapy anymore. Okay. And so the reason I came to that conclusion for myself is that I found a lot of problems within the industry of therapy that really were incongruent with my integrity.
Mm.
And so I just made a decision, a long time ago, that I just didn't want to participate in that world. And I can go into kind of what those are and what that's about. But on a more practical level, what I realized is that therapy did a pretty good job helping people heal. And it did a horrible job of helping people grow higher.
Mm.
It does a great job of looking in the rearview mirror and understanding like why people are in pain. But once that is resolved, therapy is not a solution for truly helping people grow into like next and higher phases.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think most therapists are stuck, and the therapist themselves is actually not a successful person by my standards. And so they haven't reached those higher levels of success. So they don't know how to guide their clients there. They're really good at guiding their clients through pain. But once the pain is resolved, it's like therapy's done. And I experienced this in my own personal journey of going to therapy. And like, I've been in therapy for, so many years and just like working through pain. But then I would get to a place where I'm like, okay, like, I feel like this is resolved, but like, I want to like, I don't want to just like solve my marriage problem. I want to have like an exceptional marriage. Do you know how to do that? And it's kind of like, well, that's not really what we do here. It's like,
let me ask my 3 ex-wives.
yeah, it's like, or it's like, like I want to really grow my business and grow my impact. And I want to serve more people. Like, can you help me with this? Like, well, that's not what we do, So I realized that there was this like gap of what therapy could offer. And then so I started kind of like learning a lot about coaching. I started kind of like re-educating myself about like what the difference is between therapy and coaching. And so on a very technical level, I only do coaching. But on a very real and practical level, it's really a merger of the best things I know about therapy and the best things I know about coaching.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you made that transition because you saw the gap, you saw the pain, and then how did you start making that tangible for here's that next step for growth? Once a person does the healing from the past and resolving a lot of the trauma, here's how we start creating the life that we desire.
Yeah. So, I am, I'm lucky in a lot of ways that, I can, something that I can really, ask of my clients. I don't want to say demand, but it's kind of a demand. It's a loose demand. Like that if you work with me, you're going to give me explicit permission to really hold you accountable. And if that's not the relationship that you want, I totally respect that, but we just wouldn't be a good fit. So when I work with people and they tell me like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to accomplish this. I want to do this. And I was, okay, great. So then I'm going to do everything I can on my part to really hold you to task to make sure that you're moving in that direction, even to the point where it's like very confrontational and very confrontive. But my clients, they want that. They want to achieve those certain things. So um, I and that was another thing that therapy was that I saw a long time ago. I remember being in this consultation group with a bunch of therapists, and this person was like talking about this therapy client that they had for like 16 years. And I was like, I was like a very junior new therapist. And I was like, I just had that like revelation of like, didn't this person like get better enough that they would have gone outside of that at this point? And that was like a crazy consideration amongst these therapists. I'm like,
you got the,
yeah, it's like, what kind, it's like blasphemy, you know? I'm like, guys, like, this person's been coming to you for 16 years. Like, and I know as humans, like, we're never done growing. I totally understand all that. But there should be iterations and milestones where we see people move through chapters, like chapters of a book. And I didn't see that with therapy. And so I think people are able to do that more with like a coaching relationship.
Yeah. So two things you said: confrontation, which I love, and you can morph that into accountability. Why do you think, or we can see where this goes, but accountability is such a huge thing. So many people try to avoid that. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, gosh, this kind of goes into this, like, what is the crisis of humanity, and what's wrong with human nature, it kind of goes to our fallen state, our kind of our broken nature. I'm working with my own health coach right now, and I hate his accountability, but I love it at the same time. It's this real dynamic love-hate relationship. But I think that, I think human beings, if we are left to our own devices, we will just torpedo our life and live in the gutter. And this is where like my faith becomes such a central part to my business and how I work with my clients, because I think I want to explain that to people. I want to explain that without the accountability, you are going to get wrecked, and life is going to take its toll on you. So at this point, I would only work with somebody if they were willing to have that accountability in the relationship, because otherwise what I think is going to happen is that we're going to get stuck on this kind of hamster wheel of revolving conversations that don't ever go anywhere and don't ever change. And I've been in those conversations a lot in my career. And they're not rewarding for me, but even take me out of the equation, they're just so unproductive and unfruitful for the clients that we're working with, And so if there isn't the accountability piece, I just don't think human beings are going to grow, because I think we're going to always default back to when push comes to shove and when life gets really challenging, we will always default back to what is easiest. And that's just our sin nature. That's just in our human nature. We can't get around that. And so without that accountability piece, I just don't think people are going to kind of get very far.
Well, we tend to seek comfort as a safety mechanism. And that's kind of the default. And that's one of the biggest things, really kind of tying everything in of mental health and addiction, is those that seem to grow have people outside of their internal influence, a locus of control, to give feedback, to hold up that mirror and say, you said you don't want to go left and you keep going left.
Yes.
Like, let's take a look at what happened the last 2,000 times you went left.
Right.
And what's possible if we go right. And so that accountability, yet for some reason, human natures, we tend to fight that. Like you even said, like, my health coach, damn, I hate it. But at the same time, earlier you talked about self-discipline is, well, I'll say it this way. To me, self-discipline is the ultimate freedom. For some reason, we don't put the two together. We think, oh, discipline, that's not freeing. But when you do it for a while and build that self-trust, it's one of the most freeing things. Right. And so being able to do that.
And I think with accountability too, I think what it does is that it brings up feelings of being controlled within human nature. And of course, as humans, we don't want to be controlled. We want to feel autonomous. We want to feel like we have free will, like we can make our own decisions. And when we have someone in our life that's holding us accountable, it can activate that fear of like, okay, I don't like the way this feels. This doesn't feel good. I don't want someone to be intrusive into my life. I don't want someone to be controlling with me. And so there's just like a natural kind of like rebellion about that. It's also why a lot of people struggle with their spiritual life, because by having a relationship with God, by the nature of what that relationship is, God is an accountability partner of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And that can cause people to feel controlled. It's like, I want nothing to do with God, right? It's like, because, well, if he's, if he's involved and he's with me and he's watching me, it like, that feels like a lot.
Yeah. I want free will of choice. Okay, damn it, life sucks.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is like the twist. Okay. And I'm so glad you talked about the freedom thing, because I think that if I can help people see that accountability is the doorway to freedom. Because without the accountability, you're never going to be set free. But with the accountability, it's like this temporary medicine that you have to take in order to be ultimately freed. Because without it, you won't be able to get there on your own. Mm-hmm. And you're going to stay stuck in that internal psychological prison. But you need a guide to hold you accountable for just a moment in time, not forever, just for a brief moment in time, so you can ultimately be freed. And so if people can kind of understand it that way, it's like, okay, you know what? I think I can tolerate that. Yeah. But it just brings up this old mommy daddy stuff, like, I'm not going to let anybody be involved in my life. I'm going to do it my way. It's like, well, okay.
Nobody can screw my life up other than me.
Exactly. I mean, dude, you're in the recovery business and I think that's probably the hardest place, because you're fighting, a lot happening inside someone's brain that just, they want to do what they want to do and they don't want to do anything else.
It's so difficult. And there's this whole spectrum. I actually just talked with a guy who, after like 15 years, think maybe closer to 20, just got out of the entire industry. He's like, I can't take this anymore. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm burnt out. And I'm sitting there, I'm kind of going, yeah, we see turnover and burnout so fast because of how difficult it can be. But on the other side of that is, I've seen some of the most amazing, beautiful comeback stories when they use that, we'll call it addict self, and let the recovery self drive the addict self. So it's like, I don't take no as an answer. And it's amazing when it's focused on a goal worthy of a calling, if that makes sense. So it's this beautiful thing. So you're talking about, I love your standpoint and mindset now, but what were some of the beliefs that you had before that maybe you had to completely destroy or completely look at and say, I'm open to learning something else, because I don't think anyone's born this way.
Yeah.
So what are some beliefs that were maybe difficult to change?
Well, I mean, I could talk about it like even in my journey from like being a therapist too, because I think I learned a lot about how humans grow in graduate school and like training to be a therapist, and the training that everybody has to go through to get licensed. And, I've been on my own kind of journey, just kind of dismantling some of those beliefs. Just some of the beliefs, like as therapists, we're taught to be value neutral, that we should keep our own values out of the therapy relationship. So the idea is that if you come to me and you're like, hey, like I'm thinking about, maybe leaving my marriage, I shouldn't say, oh, that's wrong, Mark, you shouldn't do that. That would be me placing my values on you. So as a good therapist, I should be like, okay, well, it's your decision, and, tell me why you want to do that and why that's important to you. I am definitely not value neutral. And I did value neutral for a lot of years until I felt this incredible violation with my own integrity. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be value neutral and sleep well at night. Okay. And so that was one thing where like I realized, and dude, thank God, I was scared that by not being value neutral, I would like torpedo my own business. But I realized my clients want to know what is right and what is wrong. My clients were craving someone like me to say, that's stupid, you shouldn't do that.
So how did you give light to that voice? Because so many people we hear, they'll hear the whispers and the taps, and they're just like, oh yeah, you heard it, but it sounds like you cultivated it and then begin to make change. Do you mind unpacking that a little bit?
Yeah, it's I don't know that I'm super conscious of what that process was for me, but I think it was a many years driving away from my office at the end of the day and just feeling not good about what I just experienced with a client. And just feeling like, did I do the right thing? and because I am a believer, I feel this incredible accountability to God that I am doing the right thing. And I would just leave my office and be like, man, I don't know that I did the right thing. I don't know. And there was many instances where I can look back and say, I didn't do the right thing. I didn't speak up. I didn't say that you shouldn't do that. I didn't, kind of hold that line. And so after a lot of years of really violating my own value system and violating my own integrity, I just came to the place where I'm like, either I have to show up doing the right thing, drawing lines in the sand and putting stakes to the ground, or I have to just completely get out of the business. I can't stay in the business and play this game, play this facade that everything is just subjective, this moral relativism that I don't have any value. I just couldn't do it anymore. So it was really kind of a make or break scenario for me where I was like, either I'm going to be me and fully me, or I just can't do the business at all. I have a great, my wife is so awesome. She's so supportive of like me having kind of gone through that, and she's just like, do whatever you need to do. If you need to pack it all in. And what she really encouraged me to just like try to really show up as my full self. And so now I do that, and I do it unapologetically. And I think the world, one of the things that I'm like very passionate about, especially something that I coach men a lot on, is there's a lot of reason why men suffer today, but one of the reasons why many men are suffering silently is because they do not have anything that they're fighting for in their life. And they are, because the world has conditioned us to not have values. The world has conditioned us to go along to get along, to be, not rock the boat. What that's done is that it's created a lot of passive men who are in this like internal turmoil because they do have values and they do know what is right and what is wrong, but they don't want to lose their job because the HR department might find out that they said this thing. And so they can't really say this thing, and they get around their friend group and they can't really speak up what they think about certain things because they don't want to be ostracized from the friend group. And so they're living with this feeling inside that they're not being fully authentic. They're not being fully themselves. They're not fighting for something important. And so they die on the vine. They die in this quiet resignation. And I know that to be true because I experienced that for myself personally in my kind of journey transitioning out of therapy, but also just the conversations I've had with people. It's like, what are you really fighting for? And most guys are like, well, what do you mean? I don't even know what that means. It's like, well, you have a fight in you. Something really matters to you. Do you know what that is? Like, this is part of growth. This is part of, the evolution to, kind of going back from like therapy to coach transition. Like, a therapist is not asking their clients that question, and so, but it's a question that is like so central to every man's purpose. And most men don't know what it is. This is a very long way around of me kind of explaining that I had to fight. I had to figure out what I was fighting for in my little world. And once I kind of figured that out, then it kind of unlocked a lot of stuff for me.
So what are you fighting for now?
I'm on a mission for, I know why I'm on this earth. I am on this earth to help men, specifically help husbands figure their shit out. There's a more sophisticated way to say it, but that comes in lots of different kind of like nuanced ways. But I come from the most, horrendous family background, in the sense that like, I don't know my biological dad. He was a heroin addict. My mom's been married 3 times. My stepdad was a, psychopath, violent alcoholic. And I have like a ton of trauma, and, thank God for his grace, guiding me, sending me on my own healing journey. Great people in my life, including therapists. And when I think about it, it's like, dude, I'm the last one. that's supposed to be helping guys in their marriage. And that's how I know it's such a God story. Because it doesn't make sense outside of God, that God would use me. And it's kind of like, if you read the Bible and you think about the people that God uses, for all of his work, it's like, dude, it's just a bunch of like inadequate losers, like me, And so, it's like, and this job is really hard. Just like, I know you feel that way too, dude. Like, your job is really hard. I mean, there's a lot of blessing, and there are moments where it's like, man, that's really rewarding. I think most days it doesn't feel that way. Most days it's a slog through the mud. But I know that I'm called to do it, and there's no turning back. I can't not do anything else. And so that's why I'm here. That's why I'm on this earth, and I'll just keep doing it as long as God keeps putting people in front of me.
So you said most days, and that it resonated a lot, is like sledging through the mud. What keeps you going most days?
Well, I got a stay-at-home mom and 2 little boy dogs, so I got to support the family. So this is where like our, when you talk about things like a calling and stuff, it's very difficult. I have found it to be really difficult to put that into like human words. Like when I tell people like, this is my calling, they're like, what exactly does that mean? I'm like, well, it's like, it just means that you just know with every fiber of your being that this is what you were supposed to do, And so that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me kind of going on the really hard days, is that I don't have, like, for me, there's no plan B. There's no exit plan. There's no like, well, if I don't like this, I'll go work at a digital marketing company. Nope. There's no plan B. And it kind of reminds me of something. I think I'm going to, if someone listens to this, they can correct me, but I think it was Dan Hardy that talked about 100% is easier than 99%. And it's this idea that like, when you are really all in on something, psychologically, it's way more freeing than being 99% in on something. Because if you're only 99% in on something, there's that 1% part of you that's kind of like, well, I don't know. I don't know if this is the right thing. And so I have a 100% commitment and perspective to the work that I do. And that keeps me really sane. Because if I had that 1% kind of like question mark, well, maybe I shouldn't do this, then I think it would give me an out. That's also the way I live my life in almost every domain of my life too, though. And it's something I love helping people understand too, that it's like with my marriage. There is no plan B with my marriage. There is no exit plan. There is no all options, because I have that mindset of like, it's 100%. And people sometimes, when I say that, people are like, it might feel confining, like, oh, like, like, well, what if it got really bad? Like, don't you want an exit? But here, this is like the crazy twist, is that from a mindset standpoint, it's the most freeing thing in the world. I wrote a blog about that one time, about how my wife set me free, and how getting married, a lot of people look at it like, oh, the ball and chain, you're settled down now. It was the opposite experience for me, because I was so free to fully commit to the relationship that there was no wiggle room for anything else. And it's like putting blinders on a horse. There's so much freedom for that horse that it only knows how to run in one direction. There's no decision fatigue.
Yeah, that's a beautiful analogy.
There's no like wondering, should I go there? Should I go there? It's like, I only go in one direction.
I saw a picture a while ago, this old couple holding hands, and they were saying, like, what's been your secret? I think they took like 75 years anniversary. They said, well, we come from a generation that doesn't throw things away when they need to be fixed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that one hit so hard. I thought, that is so beautiful of everything has wear and tear. It's part of the human experience.
Yeah.
And if I'm not continually looking to repair, like Dr. Gottman's work, the repair attempts, if I'm not continually repairing, it's going to continue to tear, and then we expose of whatever it is, and we become a fast food nation of exposing of single serve items. And so you see this even in marriage and relationships.
Right.
What happened? Well, I didn't like this. Okay, what happened? I didn't like this, as opposed to, this is the one I chose. We're going all in.
Right.
So it's important to find someone that's going to be in the foxhole with you to say, I'm
Right.
all in too.
I'm
So
all in, right?
So
Yeah.
we're either going to be miserable or we're going to figure this out and just be so good.
Right.
So it's really incredible of seeing that, and it's neat to hear your stance of how you're helping other people see that too, and to
Right.
work through.
Right. And also, I just want to touch on something, just in case somebody's listening to that. They're gonna wonder, well, what if my wife isn't all in? This is what I've learned, is that when I create an all-in mindset inside my relationship, it role models for my wife to also have her own version of that. So, I mean, ideally, in a perfect world, we would, two people would come together with that mindset. But I've also learned that we can instill that mindset in other people by just living it out ourselves. And so there's that's nice too, right? Because then we don't have to like, well, what if my wife doesn't have it? Like, well, why don't you just focus on you having it and see what happens? It's a harder path.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
One of the other things that you talked about is your purpose. And once you tapped into that and removed everything else, no plan B, I'm curious how that affected your level of fulfillment in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel super dialed in when it comes to fulfillment. When I think about things like I love asking people about their own purpose, and I know a lot of times people will, it's a hard question, because it can be kind of vague and stuff, but like when it comes to, I think that personal fulfillment is always going to be handicapped by somebody's not understanding what their purpose is. Because it kind of gets into that space of like happiness versus fulfillment. We've heard people talk about like, what's the difference between happiness and joy and stuff. And like, when I hear the word fulfillment, I think about something much more deep than circumstantial happiness. I think about something like, do you really sleep well at night? Do you sleep well at night knowing like just that sense of peace of like, okay, it was another day done well. And having a lot of purpose in what I do gives me a lot of fulfillment that I just don't think it's possible if I didn't have that purpose. Because I mean, these people too, man. I know so many people like that live up the street from here that they have everything. Circumstantially, they should be very fulfilled, but we know that they're not, because they're missing something really important. They're missing an ingredient that money can't buy, that only dedication to really going on this inward journey can solve. Really learning about yourself, understanding some really important things, being in that tug of war with your history, because that's where purpose comes from, and that's where also fulfillment is going to come from.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I love it, because I think it seems like a lot of people are like, oh, here's this magic box that once you find your purpose.
Right.
But you were talking more of what I gathered, or at least what I heard you say, is it's more of going inside, and there's this internal conflict that it actually takes wrestling and I'll say at times violent execution with one's own soul and ego to wrestle that out. Because if we're looking externally, which is what we see a lot of people do around here, we feel more emotionally and spiritually bankrupt than even before when we didn't have as much. Does that make sense?
So true, man. So true. And I can also just say too, like, I think that real purpose, the deep, deep purpose, can only be found through your pain. And if people are avoiding their own pain journey, they're never going to find purpose. They're never going to find that sense of like, dude, I know exactly why I'm on this earth. And but I understand, it's something we want to avoid. It's not fun. It's not easy. There's no rewards in it. It's time consuming. It can be very expensive. And, it's better to just like buy a new car and avoid it. You feel better for a little bit,
Get a new car every month. It's just,
yeah,
it's fun, but it just keeps, and then it goes to weeks and then days.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I had this really interesting conversation with a friend of mine pretty recently where we were talking about like, because we're in the business of helping people inside their marriage. And I was telling, because I went through a divorce in my late 20s, and that was the catalyst that kind of blew up my life and sent me on a therapy journey. And it really just changed my life. And so I was telling him how, like, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, I was so grateful for going through a divorce, going through that experience. And because I realized that had I not gone through that experience, I probably would have been just one of these people just kind of like chugging along and, trying to, get some new thing to distract me for a moment. But it basically just like unraveled everything for me. And I was so thankful for it. And then we got into this like really crazy philosophical conversation, like, well, why are you trying to help people save their marriages? Why don't you just let them fail? And I was like, that's really a great question. I don't know if I have an answer to that. I think that, I think people can get close to failure and feel enough pain where they don't have to take it all the way. But there's going to be a lot of people that just need to totally collapse in order to experience the transformation that they need.
Yeah, one of the most difficult things, I haven't figured it out yet, so hopefully you can help me with this, but one of the most difficult parts of life is sometimes leaving a person where they are and how you found them instead of, I don't know how to put it other than it's like, I've seen certain things in my life and I'm trying to explain it. Like to my wife, I'm like, oh, I want to hear you. Oh, it's beautiful. It's like this. I'm like, I don't know how to explain something that I've seen that you haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes faith for that vivid description. And it's kind of like, if I could just take you there, but you got to get on a plane to go. And like, oh, no. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's a crappy analogy, but
that's a great analogy. I think that makes so much sense.
But I'm trying to figure out at least, and I've only figured this out maybe in the last 3 to 5 years of being like, okay, I can't fix anybody, but being okay with leaving some people how you found them, knowing that maybe you can or can't, but to be okay with leaving them not okay. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Makes so much sense. I feel like this is connected to what you're saying, but I just want to share something that goes on in my head when I listen to you. It's kind of like there's a role modeling, and I know you're a great role model for so many people, like in your business. Like I just had this thought that like if we could surround ourselves with people, but yeah, if we could surround ourselves with people that had something figured out that we didn't have figured out, then it would just rub off on us. It's like osmosis. And there was something that you said that kind of reminded me of that, because like there's some things that you can't explain. There's some things that you cannot teach. There's some ways of being that can only be imparted through close contact and experience. Like you can't read it in a book. You can't get it in a therapy session or in a coaching session. It just has to be like, wow, I spent time around this person and I learned something that was unlearnable in a traditional way. Does that kind of like...
it does. It reinforces how we're all like connection. So one of the things I say is addiction is isolation. So connection is recovery. And so many people miss connection. Like they can even be around people, but if they're not like emotionally, spiritually present, they can still feel alone in a room. So that really resonated of this connection and just being around other people that are all living at that higher standard.
Right. And how few people actually have that. How few people have... I feel like, man, I feel like it's been a part-time job in my own personal life to try to find people like that, to try to find people who are like, I just want to be around you. I just want to be around you because I see that you're doing something totally different. And I think for the average person out there in the world, they have none of that. Like their world is basically surrounded by accomplices who keep them connected to the devil of mediocrity.
That's very well put.
And I just think, so I feel just inspired to say, like, for someone listening to this, if your life isn't where you want it to be, it's like, maybe you don't need to go to therapy. Maybe you don't need to go to coaching. Maybe you just need to find people and like put yourself in their presence and commit to that. It's kind of like discipleship, like in its most purest form is like, just spend time with me and learn. You're going to learn the ways of living.
That's how it was passed down for, I don't know, tens of thousands of years.
Yes.
Until the Industrial Revolution. It was, you're going to hang with me and watch how we farm, how we build, how we do different things. And then nowadays it's go sit in a classroom for 18 years, which we could probably go on a whole other soapbox for that one. So one of the things that stood out to me.
Yeah, we're a homeschooling family. We could go major soapbox on that one.
we may have to do round two.
Yeah.
One of the things you shared though, and it was very moving because we hear this a lot in recovery, is your background. So you had every excuse in the book to turn out and go down a complete different road, justifiable. And we see a lot of that. How do you think you were able to use your past as fuel for the future as opposed to using it as something else, if that makes sense? Like as an excuse, I guess we could say.
Yeah. Dude, that's a really big question, man. Because the first thing that I think about in that question is like, I think about my brother who went through the same experiences that I did, same family. And to say he struggles is kind of like an understatement, And it's like, well, why did I do that? Why did I go down that path? Why did I have this experience and my brother has this experience? There's a great book. If you want it, I'll send you the link to it. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's written by a psychiatrist. And she became a psychiatrist and her twin sister became a hospitalized schizophrenic. And it's this like really beautiful, like philosophical story about, well, why did that happen to me? Why was I able to be high functioning and go to medical school? And my twin, who had the same experiences, wasn't able to do that. And I honestly don't have a good answer to that question because I think it gets very deep into, God using certain people and, for certain purposes that are just not explainable to me, and so I don't really want to touch on that because that's like a deep, like theological kind of conversation that's probably like highly contested, but I can just tell you that from my personal experience, I went through a lot of pain, and going through a lot of pain motivated me to not want to feel the pain. And there are other people who seem to go through the exact same experience of pain, but they are almost okay resigning themselves in the pain. And I can't fully explain why some people do that and some people don't do that. I mean, and that's why I'm very reluctant to give myself any credit. Like, oh, like I'm something special because I use those experiences to transform into something that looks better. Because I think it's even deeper than that, And so I don't know what the answer is. I just know that for me personally, I didn't want to feel that way anymore. And I had a vision of something that could be different. And I just went after that vision relentlessly.
Yeah, I hear that. I saw the vision and I continued to pursue it. Distractions will pop up. I still continue to pursue it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like the non-negotiable. I just don't even know another way at this point.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I'll finish with one question that kind of taps on that, but might hit it from a different angle. So you have gone through a ton of stuff. This version of you now, what would you go back to tell you at the darkest moment of your life? So to go back in time, when you're at the darkest moment, what would you tell that version of you?
Great question. I would tell that person how important he was and how there was something very important waiting for him. Something along the lines of kind of anchoring that person to the aspiration of like what was possible. I wouldn't have been able to see it, but if somebody would have come and told me, I mean, maybe there was some people in my life that actually came and said something similar to that, like, you're better than this, you know, I see something different in you. But that's probably what I would have needed to hear, because I was, you know, I wouldn't have been able to see that on my own.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time coming down.
Yeah, man.
I could do this all day.
Yeah,
So
it's so good, bro.
I feel like we just scratched the tip of the
There's
surface.
so much to say. I know.
But I appreciate you and the work you've done and how you show up in this world to help other people. It is very beautiful to see.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
And likewise, back at you.
Ditto.
All right, dude.